Hey, Dan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Good morning, Brandee. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks so much. I am so excited about this topic, mainly because I love talking about money anyway.
Well,
But
you are one of very few, and a lot of people
really,
don't like talking about money.
oh my gosh,
I
I
mean,
love
I
it.
love it. Yeah, I mean, we can nerd out all day, so I'm
Yeah.
super happy to be here.
Good. I'm so ready. I feel like I know it's fun. It's actually funny. I have a reputation among some of my friends of being like a little over the top with money because
Uh,
I really enjoy knowing where every cent goes. And sometimes I make people crazy with that, including my husband.
yeah, yeah.
But it's like it's almost like a puzzle to me. Like I'm like, okay, did we stay under the percentage we were supposed to for food? Or I don't know, it's like a game.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
not everyone thinks that way.
I totally understand. Yeah, I'm much the same way. I mean, I consider myself a money nerd, and
Yeah.
so when it comes to those details, at a certain point, it's really enjoyable because it's like, oh, everything's fitting together. I never became an accountant, but I love that feeling of like if something balances at the end and it like comes
Yes.
out perfectly, it's like, oh, it feels so good. But I know a lot of people do not feel that way, and
Mhm.
so that's part of my coaching. It's like, okay, I know that I'm a nerd, but I also know you are not, so let's try to find some middle ground, some compromises
Yeah, find some
here.
balance, and I think that's why I'm so excited to have you on the show because I think that happens a lot in relationships or even with just business owners where you almost wanna put your head in the sand because you don't understand it, so you're like, "Well, then just
Yeah,
forget it. I'm just gonna spend what I need to spend," but that's not how we create wealth, that's not how we invest or save or, just be smart with our money, and so I love this topic. I'm so excited to talk. So, tell us a little bit about you and like who you are and why you're an expert in this area.
yeah, absolutely. So my name is Dan Hinz, and my company is Adulting with Money, and I'm a financial coach, and I help couples unite, not fight over their money. Whether you want to crush debt faster, buy a house sooner, or you just want to get on the same page. And my journey to becoming a financial coach is really wonky, and I'm sure that's probably kind of the same for a lot of people, where you go to college maybe and you get a degree, but then you don't do anything with
Yep.
that degree.
Yep.
Mine is electrical engineering. So, I've never really been a professional engineer. There's actually exams you're supposed to take, never took them. And so,
Really?
nope. What happened was I was getting to my senior year of college and I decided to get my MBA because I
Okay.
figured with my leadership skills, like let's try to be middle management, upper management. Like I knew the leadership and climbing that ladder. I'm that A type personality. So I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, well, let's get the master's degree now, get it over with. But that is when I fell in love with finance.
Okay.
And especially being in engineering with numbers and being analytical, the
Yeah.
financial part really stuck with me. And then my wife, she actually got her dream job. She became a sea lion and dolphin trainer here in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was, which took a, and we both grew up in Iowa. So we moved from Iowa to Florida, and the engineering prospects in our area weren't as good as I was wanting them to be. And I
Yeah.
had the opportunity to become a financial advisor. I'm like,
Okay.
oh wow, I get to have control of my schedule. I get to work with people with money. Let's do it. But I did that for about 2 years, and I never found that like mentor, that person where I'm like, I want to be that person,
Yeah.
in 20 years. And so, because I couldn't see myself in that career for 20 years, I'm like, well, maybe two is enough. So I ended that and jumped on with our family's business. And so I'm
Okay.
vice president, dad's president. But I also have this business as a financial coach where I still
Okay.
get to help couples. I still get to help families and individuals with those money decisions, because
Yeah.
as much as we want money to be simple, it just isn't. And it takes some time and some practice to get used to it. So that's where I want to take my leadership skills, my financial skills, and just my general geniality, and help people make great decisions. And that's, I don't know, that's kind of the short version. I don't know if
Yeah.
you wanted me to go any deeper or longer into any of that.
I mean, I love that. I love that your, career didn't take a straight path. I mean, so
No.
often people talk about that is that, I went to college for this, but that's not really what I want to do. And I think that's super freeing to be able to find what you're passionate about. Sometimes we we don't know at 18 what we want to do for the rest
Oh
of our life,
no. Yeah.
right? And
Mm-mm.
so you get this degree and then you realize, yeah, maybe not. That's not what
Yeah.
lights
Not
me
not
up.
so much.
Right. And I think when you're incredibly passionate about what you do, it exudes from you, right? Like people can see that in you. And so I love hearing you talk about money and kind of how you help couples. I think that that's it, you can see that you're clearly passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and the reason that I decided to work with couples is
Hmm.
because of just what me and my own wife had to go through.
Okay.
Fortunately, we're both very non-confrontational people, so we didn't have any knockout, drag out fights.
Yeah.
But what happened was one day, as I was sitting on the couch in our apartment, and of course it's an apartment, so I can see the front door from the couch. And she walks in with these giant bags from Target, and I'm
Okay.
pretty sure she had bought pillows or something because they were extra big this day. And, the first thought I had is, what did she buy this time?
Yeah.
But then we had just gotten married like within a couple months of that. And I realized also right after that was, if our marriage is going to last 60 years, I can never have that thought again.
Yeah.
What are we doing or not doing that we're not on the same page, where I'm not sure that we're on the same page? So it was kind of an internal, I needed to do my own soul searching, but then we found a plan in a way to just start talking about money together, start making goals together, budgeting, all that stuff, to just make sure that the next time she walks in the door with bags from any store ever, I ask her, instead of thinking, what did she buy this time? I ask,
Yeah.
hey, what'd you get today? Did you find anything fun? Like, if
Right.
I'm trying to enjoy the shopping experience along with her.
Right. That is a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Cause I feel like that's 100% of couples have felt this at some point in their relationship. Right. And I know
Mhm.
I do this a lot. I'm not the spender in our family. And my husband and I know that, like, it's not a big surprise to either of us. But it's interesting to me because I don't like to spend money on little things. So like,
Mm.
Amazon purchases or Target purchases, but then I can drop $10,000 without even thinking twice about it. Like, I'll literally
Yeah.
be like, yeah, that's $10,000. That's totally worth it. Like, put new floors in the whole house. And he's like, what? So it's really interesting how those dynamics work. So can you tell us a little bit about how you coach couples in finding those middle grounds and setting those goals together?
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, I believe that every couple, if they can master three major habits,
Uh-huh.
they will master money together. And those
Okay.
three major habits are essentially, number one, goal setting.
Okay.
Deciding what do we want as individuals, and then how do we combine that as a family and as a couple to say, well, what do we want
Right.
together? And that language is important, to say we want this. It's not, my debt, your debt, my savings, your retirement. It
Mhm.
trying to use those pronouns of we and our, and start to combine that. But those goals, it's not just getting out of debt. Is to say, when do you want to get out of debt? How fast do you want to get out of debt? To really try to find a monthly number. Like, how much does this goal cost?
Okay.
Because so many couples talk and argue in this circular pattern, because it's a lot of what ifs. Like,
Right.
well, we could do this or we could do that. We could do this or we could do that. And until they actually sit down and start putting numbers to paper,
Mhm.
then it's amazing how many arguments stop when that starts to happen. So that's habit number one. Habit number two is then tracking your money, just having
Okay.
one place where all you can see all your money coming and going. It can be a spreadsheet, it can be joint bank accounts, it can be just an app. It can be, there are apps now for couples specifically.
Okay.
So it's, we talk about what tool they want to use. And then that third habit is making decisions. You know what you want from habit one. You know where you are from habit two. Habit three is, what's next? What's the next step?
Okay.
And that's where the budgeting comes in. But I call these habits and not steps, because it's something you can do and master for the rest of your life. And my wife and I have been monthly budgeting for 8-9 years now. We've probably put together 100 budgets and had 100 budget meetings. And I tell you what, after about a year, you get really good at it. It doesn't
Yeah.
take 8 or 9 years, but it does take some time. It does take some practice, because for all couples, it can be a new thing, and new
Yeah.
things are unfortunately a little difficult starting out.
Yeah. And I think too, because you are combining two totally different mindsets about how money works and what it should do for you. Right. And I love this idea. I love this 3-step process. My husband and I went through this too. I actually, I came into our marriage with more debt than he did because I was always taught that as long as you had good credit, you would never want for anything.
Mm.
And I don't know that that's the best policy. I think it's true. I don't know that it's the best policy. And so I had debt. I also had student loan debt. And so he didn't
Mm.
really know what that was. But he also was never taught about money at all.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
neither one of us were really taught about money. And so all of a sudden we end up with him being a spender and me having debt and thinking credit was okay. And so
Hmm.
it was kind of like this avalanche of terrible, and
Yeah, so sometimes it can be a little bit of the blind leading the blind.
exactly, like neither one of us
Yeah.
really knew what we were doing. We were both doing it incorrectly but differently. And so I feel like there was a lot of challenge around money talk, and we did end up doing the Dave Ramsey plan. I don't
Mhm.
know if you're a fan or not a fan. I feel like
That's a good question. I mean, I'm kind of a fan of everybody. I've read
okay.
basically everything Dave Ramsey has written. David Bach, Gene Chatsky, Susie Orman, Ramit Sethi, Rachel Richards.
Yeah.
We know her now. And so it's, as a coach, I find that I'm like one of three people. I'm like a finance professor because I can help you run the math and learn
Yeah.
all what buttons to click. And then I'm also a life coach to try to talk about what it is that you want as individuals. But
Hmm.
then the third is that marriage counselor where I'm trying to help you combine and to talk with each other and have productive conversations. So,
Right.
so yeah. So when it comes to Dave Ramsey or anyone else,
Yeah.
it really kind of comes down to is I want to figure out kind of where you are with your knowledge,
Yeah.
what you want, and try to help bridge that gap because everyone's a little bit different. Everyone
Hmm.
has a little bit different personality. And so, for me personally, I'm the type of person that I would rather make one step on 10 projects a day, whereas
Okay.
some people would rather get one project done and then move
Yes.
on to the next and be intense in that way.
Yeah,
So,
and that's me.
yeah. Yeah,
and
exactly.
and
So,
that's why his plan worked, I think, for us. Also because I felt like for us, again, I'm with you. Like I don't think that there's a one person that you can necessarily say, I'm gonna do this plan, because we've had to go off of it now because my husband was like, I can only live under these strict guidelines for so long.
yeah.
And but it really did work for us in that a lot of people feel like kind of having an envelope system or having a budget system puts too many rules in place. But for us,
Hmm.
it was almost like this freedom for both of us, for me not to feel like every purchase he made or even that I made was out of bounds. It was like, okay, well, we have this much for house tools
Hmm.
or how, whatever, home upgrades, or we have this much for eating out. And so once we hit that number, we both knew we had to stop spending for that month, but
Right.
we also
Hmm.
knew we had the freedom to spend money. Does that make sense? So instead of it
Oh
being like,
yeah, absolutely. And I
I
mean,
think it
and
was freeing.
yeah, there is some freedom in discipline. It's kind of like when
Yes.
you don't have to decide or when the decision's been already made, then it frees up your brain and your mind to do something else or to go down a different path. But
Yeah.
it's also, when it comes to couples, one of the
Hmm.
best things that any couple can do is to make sure you have that little bit of individual money, that his and
A
hers
hundred
or
percent.
his and his,
Yes.
hers and hers, fun money,
Yep.
pocket money, where you don't have to sit down and agree on every purchase. I also believe that budgeting can eventually be a waste of time if you're
Uh-huh.
doing too much. If there's too much detail, then you're spending a lot of time and energy and there's not enough payoff.
A
And so
hundred
it's so
percent.
that's where I'm working with couples where one of them is a lot more detail oriented and the other is not, and trying to find that budget where it helps both people to
Yep.
either simplify something that's too complicated or make a budget that's way too simple to a little bit more complicated, because in the end you need information to
Hmm.
make a great decision, but too much information is a waste of
Well,
time.
and that's 100% where I was. Once we were
Mm,
out of debt and we were still using this like super strict, like where does every penny go kind of a platform, it became I loved it. But it became very like rigid and it
Yeah.
wasn't fun anymore. And we
Yep.
had really reached the goals with that budgeting system that we'd set, which was to get out of debt. Now, the next
Mhm.
step was to build wealth. And that didn't necessarily involve us knowing where every single penny was going.
Yes.
Like I was
Yes.
challenging silly things. And so that's when it became this isn't fun anymore. Like we're not enjoying what we've you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's no
so
longer a tool to help towards a goal and more of just a giant chore. Like,
yes. Yeah.
and that's where, I have worked with, I was a guest financial coach on a local radio show, and we
Uh-huh.
did like a contest where we
Okay.
found two families and I coached them and see who could like pay off the most debt in like 6
Fun.
weeks.
Okay.
And one, it was actually a single mother, and because of how tight her money was, she was doing weekly budgeting. Like
Okay.
every week had its budget, but because she had so little wiggle room, that was
Yeah.
needed, and it was very helpful. But
Mhm.
then if you get, if you're doing a little bit okay with your money, like my wife and I, you can, monthly is fine. Like
Yeah.
you're probably not going to run into a giant problem within a month that
Right.
you can't handle. But then, we're in the TLF group with Vincent, and he does it like an annual budget. And so there are some families where it's just like, if you've got so much, if you're completely out of debt and you're financially independent and you've got
Mhm.
the emergency funds, then yeah, just like doing an annual budget is going to be fine. It's enough to keep you on track towards your goals. And that's the whole point is, a lot of people see budgeting as constriction, as
Yep.
constraint, as I can't have any fun. But personally, I'm like, there's only two reasons a budget exists. Is number one, did you get closer to your goals? And number two, did you dig yourself deeper in a hole? And like anything in between, I don't care. Like as a coach, I don't care if you went over budget on groceries. I don't care if you overspent your fun
Right.
money. But if you underspent somewhere else and it evens out, cool. Because
Great.
that means you got closer to your goal and you didn't dive deeper into debt. Everything else is negotiable.
Smart. I love
Yeah.
that. I think that
Mhm.
that's really smart. And your goals do change as your financial
Yes.
situation changes, right? So some people may start off with a goal of either getting out of debt or buying their first home, and then the next goal might be, I don't know, going on a lavish vacation. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
really someone's
Well,
goal or
and my
not,
wife
but
and I are looking at real estate investing. Like we've gotten to a
right.
point in our lives where it's just like, gosh, we're filling up our IRAs every year, and
Yeah.
then we've still got a little bit of extra money. What else can we do?
Yeah.
What is it that we want? And that goes back to why I teach those 3 habits, is
Mhm.
because if you are learning to master those, it doesn't matter what life throws at you, because then you just reset your goals, keep
Yep.
track of your money, decide on the next step, reset your goals, and you just keep going over that over and over again.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. Now, I know that a lot of our listeners are small business owners, and so they may work with their spouse. And I think one of the things to note too is that it is super, super important to, as a small business owner, to be able to pay yourself either a salary or to pay yourself a draw from your business, however you take the money,
Yep.
keeping those super separate and making sure your business is your business and your personal is your personal. I just kind of wanted to note that as we're talking, because I know that we're talking a lot about couples and things like that. And
Yeah.
it's just really, I'm very passionate about entrepreneurs paying themselves in some form or fashion. You got to pay yourself, because then you can budget your personal expenses based on what you're paying yourself from your business, whatever
Hmm.
that is. Instead of saying, I'll just take the leftover. Like you can't budget your life on whatever is left over from your business, because there won't ever be leftovers from your business.
Yeah, yeah, and
Won't
I
happen.
mean, yeah, it's Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Oh,
I'm a
it's
huge
my
fan of
favorite.
that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and my wife bought a cricket machine,
Okay.
and so that, if for those that don't know what that is, it cuts out patterns, from the computer on different types of material, vinyl
Yeah.
or other stuff, and so she has a little side hustle now where she's profitable. And
Okay.
so I had her read the first half of Profit First, just to be like, okay, if this goes from a hobby business to like you want to really start to ramp this up, that's part of the lesson, is to say,
Yeah.
well, don't just spend all your money on materials. And she's already great with money, so I wasn't worried about it. It's more about, if we decide to size this up, let's put this in our budget. And
Right.
so now in our monthly budget, because it's still a hobby business, she has this Cricut line item. So all the money that comes in and all the money that goes out for that side hustle goes in that category, so we can
Okay.
keep an eye on it. But if she really wants to, get an LLC, or we need to start tracking receipts for taxes,
Yeah.
then we'll get like a separate bank account.
Yep.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, it's because then it makes it so obvious, the money that's for the business and the money
Yes.
that's for the personal. So I firmly believe in separating that. Even if you just have to get a free checking account somewhere, just make it
Hmm.
separate.
Yeah, I mean, it's so simple to set up a free checking account, and just to make sure that those two don't commingle. And I say that from experience, because for my first, I mean, I got a business bank account immediately. Like the day I got my LLC, I also went to the bank and opened a business bank account. But I
Mhm.
was really, really bad in the beginning about mixing the two. Like if we had a good month, I'd pay myself more. If we had a bad month, I wouldn't pay myself at all. And that's just not, you just can't, that's not a job. It's just not a job. That's how it works. And you can't budget your personal finances off of that. So then that makes it really, really challenging. But
Yeah.
um
Anything you can do to level out those bumps in the road, that's
yes.
always great as well. Trying to, sinking funds are always great for personal finances. Like,
Okay.
let's put away 20, 30, $50 a month for Christmas.
Yes.
Let's just make it $100 a month towards vacation, and just like
Yeah.
let that account build up. And then when we want to use it, there's some cash sitting there. Or car repair or home
Hmm.
repair, you don't have to use that money every month, but at least it's kind of, you're waiting for something to happen, because it's gonna happen.
Yeah, and that's really what the envelope system taught us when we were
Mm,
using that
mhm.
is,
Yeah.
letting those envelopes build up. The tricky part is making sure you let those envelopes build up and you don't like say, well, it's so and so's birthday, so we'll just take it out of the automobile fund. We haven't had any repairs. And then like a repair comes up and you're like,
Yeah.
it's that big. So that's very important to let those
Well,
build up.
at least you made the decision together. Like, at least both of
Yes.
you are looking at each other like, whoops. But it's not like one's looking at the other like, what'd you do? Yeah.
So true, so true.
Yeah.
And so in our business, so my husband is full-time with our business as well, and so he manages 100% of the business finances, and I manage 100% of our personal finances.
Ah.
And so it's fun, it helps us a lot, because I now, if I wanted to take more of a draw from our business, I have to go to him and say, I want to take a bigger draw. And
Yep.
he's going to question me. I mean, he's not going to say no, but he's going to, he might actually, but
Yeah.
he'll say, why, what are you wanting to do with it? And vice versa. If we're overspending in our personal, I have to say to him, hey, we're overspending, because he's not really paying attention. It's not his fault. I manage the personal finances. So it's healthy for us to constantly have those conversations of just like,
Yeah. And anyone listening or watching that is thinking like, well, gosh, that's very combative, or questioning, like,
yeah,
why do you need this money?
right.
It's not. Once you get really good at handling money together, it ends up not being that they're trying to attack you. It's more like,
No.
well, just, I'm checking in. Well, why are you using this money? Because maybe your partner, your spouse had like, hey, but did you remember this? Like, hey, we're trying to save up for vacation.
Right.
You want to spend this money on the business as opposed to vacation. Is
Yes.
that a decision we want to make?
Yeah.
And so it's the same goes, well, in going back to that personal versus business finances,
Yeah.
I have a separate bank account for Dan Hinz Coaching, Adulting with Money, and then my
Yeah.
wife may eventually get a separate account. And so I just run my business finances.
Hmm.
And like, if I need more money and have to talk to my wife, I know that conversation is coming. So I'm a little
Yeah.
bit more careful with that spending as well. Like, I'm trying to look ahead to see, okay, what's coming up for, and so that accountability is a good
Yes.
thing.
It
That's
is a
that's
good
really
thing.
what we're going for.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, hopefully you're in a marriage or a partnership with
Yeah.
someone you value. And I'm not going to say we've never thought about money, because that would be a lie. But,
Hmm.
but it is a conversation that's so much easier for us to have now, because we, like you said, we have the same goals. We track our money together, and then we talk about like, how are we going to accomplish this? So what does that look like? Does that mean that we're increasing our salaries from the business, or does that mean that we're taking a less salary because we're trying to do something big, with the business? So it's a conversation now versus,
Hmm.
a combat.
Yeah, yeah.
Which you
Well,
never want.
and fortunately, those conversations get shorter and shorter
Oh,
as
for
well.
sure. Yeah.
Like just the other day, we're in Florida. Termites. That's a thing here, big
Oh
thing.
yeah. Uh-huh.
And so we didn't have gutters on our house, and the Terminex guy came and checked everything. He's like, you guys don't have gutters. We do gutters because as the sand, because everything
Oh
in Florida
yeah.
is sand,
Hmm.
as the sand goes away from the foundation, you get cracks, you get termites. And so he's like, I already measured the house. Here's how much it'll cost to install. We can do it on Friday. I said, hold on. Walked inside. My wife had the day off. I said, here's what's going on. Here's how much it costs. Do you want to do it? She's like, yeah. I walked back out and said yes.
Done.
And it was that short of a conversation because we're so up to speed and up to date on
Hmm.
everything every month. Is it made it a really, really short conversation when
Yeah.
you need to make a decision.
Yeah.
And so, it doesn't start out that way. It takes a little bit longer in the beginning, but then
Yes.
as things get rolling, it gets so much easier. And
It
that's really
really
what I
does.
want to help everybody to accomplish, is to make
Yeah.
it, to get to that nirvana of just like making easy, easy decisions with money.
Yeah, continue to talk about money. Don't make it a taboo conversation. Like
Yeah.
make it super open all the time. And the conversations will be hard and long in the beginning, but they get easier and they're worth it. So I know, Dan, too, a lot of our listeners that are hearing this podcast or watching the podcast on YouTube are maybe trying to pay off debt. That might be like a huge thing for them. I know that that was such a big piece of our history, my and my husband. So I know you have a 6-step process for this, right? Like you have some tips for us. So can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so I've got a free handout. It's a
Okay,
free PDF for everybody. It's called
great.
Couples Crushing Debt.
Okay,
And if they want to get that, it's adultingwithmoney.com right there on the homepage.
perfect.
But really, the first step of this process is going back to what I was talking about earlier, is setting the goal, is to say, okay, yes, we want to crush debt. We want to get out of this. So how do we want to go about that? When do we want to get out of debt? How aggressive do we want to be? And if anyone's heard of like the debt snowball versus the
Hmm.
debt avalanche method, in my freebie, it helps you decide which one is going to be best for you as a
Okay,
couple to get out of debt the fastest.
okay,
But then step 2 is to start to use better tools. And so I have just a real quick note on like, okay, should you get joint accounts or not? Have that
okay.
conversation, but also the apps that I suggest to everyone. So my 3 favorite apps are step 2 to try to just, technology is a good thing. It helps make
Yeah,
things faster. So why
I
not
love that.
do that?
Can you
Um,
tell us just real quick what those
yeah,
apps are?
yes. So my wife and I use Mint. It
Okay.
is free. Now it's not, I wouldn't consider it the best personal finance app in the world, but for being free, it's wonderful.
Okay.
And so the best app, if you're willing to start the money or spend the money and you really just want to go all in, YNAB, which is
Okay.
short for You Need a Budget.
Okay.
That's a great app. I think if you do the annual plan, it comes out to be about $8 a month.
Oh,
So,
that's not bad.
it's
Okay.
like Netflix,
Yeah.
and it's a better investment maybe than Netflix.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
um, but then third, if you want to start with something really simple, if you're not quite a money nerd, then there's 2 I would suggest, which are specifically for couples.
Okay.
One is called Honeydew, and then
Okay.
the second one is called Zeta. And that I reviewed on my YouTube channel just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And the cool thing about both of those apps is you can do everything individual or joint, like individual goals and joint goals, individual budgets, joint budgets, individual accounts, joint accounts. And so if you're a couple that's kind of, maybe engaged, or you're a younger couple or newer to the relationship and you're not ready to go all in on everything, those apps can be a really good baby step towards, doing something even more.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So that's step number 2. And we'll link all of those in the show notes. So if you're interested in all of those, and they'll be also in Dan's freebie. So you guys need to head over to Adulting with Money to grab that as well. So, okay. So step number 3 is
Right. So then step number 3 is to make the plan. And this
okay.
is where you want to start to create that budget. And I talk about zero-based budgeting,
Okay.
which, if the audience isn't familiar, essentially what happens is you say, okay, for the month of October, we're going to bring in so much money this month. where does every dollar need to go? Where is
Okay.
every penny going to be spent? And it creates this zero sum game. And the good thing about that is that when you do that and you have a goal or something you want to buy, something you want to say yes to, you've got to say no to something else.
True.
And so that's where, if you're saying yes to your goals, you want to say no to something else. And it's not just spending to spend, but it's also that for you and your partner, your spouse, is that there's accountability. To
Yep.
say if you overspend a budget, that means you're taking money from something else, something that might be more important.
Yeah.
So you want to set up that plan.
And I love that too, because like we talked about right before we started talking about these steps, is paying yourself as a business owner. The reason that is so important is even if you're just paying yourself a small amount, now you can budget on that every month. So people say to me all the time, well, I make a different amount every month. And I get that. Some people, that is just, you're on a sales commission or whatever. But if you are a business owner, which is the bulk of my listeners, then if you are even paying yourself a base salary, even if it's small, it's $15,000 a year, you can at least budget on that. And then when you can take a draw, that can go towards like a snowball of your debt, or it can go
Hmm.
towards a vacation, whatever that is. But you need to set some sort of a baseline to be able to budget off of.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
everything goes great for a quarter, then take that little bit of extra,
Great.
and then it's a bonus
Yeah,
to
then it's a
do what you
bonus.
want.
And even more reason, profit first. Oh my gosh, is
Yes.
so amazing.
Great book. I'm
um,
jealous I didn't write it.
oh my gosh, it's such a great book. So, okay. So step number 4.
So step number 4 is then to improve the plan. And this
Okay.
is where I dig a little bit deeper into like how short a budget can be versus how complicated it shouldn't be.
Okay.
And this is the conversation where, we were talking earlier about budgeting can become a waste of time if
Yeah.
it's too complicated. So step 4 is talking about, okay, you've made your first budget, which the first one's always a pain because it's new. It's not because
Yeah.
you're stupid or lazy. It's just, it's new. But then step 4 is to say, okay, well, you use your first budget for the first month, and then how do you improve it for the second month?
Okay.
What are the things to think about and to talk about to make it better the next time around? And so that every month you're tweaking it and making it a little bit better, a little bit better.
Love it. Okay.
Very
Perfect.
good. And then step 5 is staying motivated,
Okay.
is to have these money meetings and how to have these conversations. So a
Yeah.
couple, when you sit down to talk about your money, what is it that you're going to talk about first? What are you going to talk about second? What are those tasks?
I
Um,
love that.
and I don't think it's in the guide, but one amazing piece of advice I learned from a book called Radical Candor
Okay.
is that it's okay to have like a brainstorming meeting and then have a decision meeting. They don't
Okay.
have to be at the same time. And that is very common. I mean, my wife, years ago came to me and said, hey, I want to buy a new couch and love seat. I'm kind of tired of what we got. I said, okay, not to say, okay, go buy what you want. It was, okay, I agree that you want something. And the second question is, how much does it cost? And she
Yeah.
goes, I don't even know what I want to buy. It's like, okay. So then there's, you need to talk for a little while or go shopping to see what's out there, how
Right.
much it costs. And then you can get to the decision part.
Okay.
And
I
so
like
it's,
that.
yeah, it's okay to break those up.
Super helpful. Okay.
All right. And then step number 6 is pouring gas on the fire. So at this point, you've got a plan, you know what you want, you know how to improve the plan. Like, what can you do now to just do it faster?
Mm-hmm.
So just some ideas of like downgrading your living or trying to sell a car, or to, especially with COVID these days, is to cook more. you know,
100%.
when it comes
Yes.
to eating out, it's amazing how you can say no to McDonald's when you can cook something at home that tastes better, it's healthier, and
Yeah.
it's cheaper because
Yeah.
you can go to Sam's Club and buy it in bulk.
So true. I love that so much. And all of these steps are so, so helpful. And I know that Ira and I have been through them, all of these steps. It's massively important to your marriage and to your financial health. And when you are a business owner, this makes it even 10 times more important, because you aren't getting this paycheck from a business or from an employer. And so it's really, really important that you're focused on what your goals are together. So I think that these are great steps. I love that so much. So Dan, this is exciting. I feel like so many of our listeners are going to be like, okay, I totally feel like I can tackle this now, right? And to really understand where their money is going so that they're not just kind of like throwing it away, right? You want to
Hmm. Hmm.
understand where your money's going and how it's helping you and how it's growing you as a couple, right? And so tell us a little bit, tell us where our listeners can find you and how that they could
Yeah.
work with you.
Yeah. So again, adultingwithmoney.com is where you can find the freebie and send
Okay.
me a message. But it's also, I have a weekly video on YouTube coming out.
Okay.
So go to YouTube and just look for Adulting with Money or Dan Hinz. I'm the first thing that pops up either way.
I love
um,
that.
yeah. And my best videos are going to be the questions that you ask.
Okay.
And so it's not only, am I trying to give you what you want, but it's trying to help you answer the questions that are on your mind right now.
Okay.
But I have a couple videos there with my wife. Like, we had a video come out together a couple weeks ago that was basically like her spilling the tea on our budgeting process. So I just asked her a bunch of questions like, what do you really think about our budgeting process? What's the most annoying thing Dan does when it comes to money? So she's really like, I don't know that she threw me under the bus. It didn't feel like she threw me under the bus, but I mean, a lot of people really like that video. So,
I'm
uh,
sure that sounds fun. I want to go watch it now.
yeah. So that was a good one. But it's also the little things like talking about, how much should you be taking out of your paycheck to save for retirement,
Okay.
and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, find me there. Ask me questions. I'm not too big or popular yet that I can't answer your question in the comments on YouTube. So
I love that. So
yeah,
YouTube is the best place to leave a comment, and that's where people
yes,
can get in touch with you. And then do
absolutely.
you also offer coaching?
Yes, I do. So again, you can go to adultingwithmoney.com and you go to the coaching tab.
Okay.
And that's where it lays out basically how my coaching works.
Got it.
What I do, how I help, and then how you can sign up for a free session, just, a 15, 20-minute phone call with me. So you
Okay.
can just tell me what's going on. Where are
Yeah.
you at with your life? What do you want? And how can I help you out?
Yeah. You guys, I love this so much. Like I said at the beginning, I do love money, and I know not everyone does. I don't mean I love it like I want to roll in it. I mean, I
Right.
love talking about it. I really, really do. And you'll probably hear a lot more money-based podcasts coming out for me because I think it's something that we must get better about talking about. So if it's not something that you're super comfortable with talking about with your spouse, then hiring a coach or just somebody to kind of help bridge that conversation can be incredibly important. And remember, like, we have the rest of our lives, so we want to make sure that we're not just funding today, but that we're funding wealth that will sustain us well into retirement and beyond. And we have kids and all the
Oh
things.
yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
many
Yeah. And
things.
I'm way cheaper than a divorce lawyer. I can guarantee that.
That
So, but it's
that
also,
needs to
I
be
could,
your tagline.
okay. Yeah, maybe I should.
Adulting
Forget.
with money, cheaper than a divorce lawyer.
I like it. I like it. I'll test it out. We'll see how it goes.
That's right.
But it's also, yeah, the coaching, that's where I'm basically that third party
Yeah.
mediator, where
Yeah.
it's if you feel like as a couple, it's like the blind leading the blind, I'm here to just guide you.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, I'm not trying to fit square pegs into round holes.
I
So it
love
really
that.
kind of depends on how you grew up with money, how you think about money, what you already know, and
Yeah.
trying to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think that that's something that makes you very unique because a lot of times people have their plan and it's like you got to fit in the plan and not
Yeah.
everybody fits in the plan. That's not, sometimes it's like, eh. So I love that you're really getting involved with the couple and you're understanding what their goals are and kind of how they think about money and then really creating a plan for them that makes sense to them because it just doesn't, money doesn't always make sense to everybody. And so you want to make sure that you can develop a plan that works for them. So
Yeah, absolutely.
excited.
Yeah. And there's some couples where one partner is like, okay, here's the budget. Here's what we're going to do. And the other
Yes.
side is like, I didn't agree to this. And so,
Yes.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to help avoid is to say, to get you on the same page.
Same goals, same goals. Well,
Yep.
Dan, thank you so much. You guys, all of these links are in the show notes. So Dan's YouTube will be there and his website, links to the coaching page and to all of the apps that he gave us as well as the freebie. So if you're interested in crushing debt with your spouse or with your boyfriend or your, I don't know, whatever they are.
Yeah,
Then,
fiance.
then you can go over and grab the freebie at Adulting with Money as well. And Dan, thank you so much. This was awesome.
This was fantastic. Thank you for having me, Brandee. I really appreciate it.
Of course.